So here are all the fuel bits. Okay, so it comprises of a storage system, 2 tanks, 1 in each wing, with its associated ventilation system. Tanks have to be ventilated, guys, because they are subject to fuel tanks are ventilated, because unlike your car, even your car tank is ventilated, but these tanks, they go from temperatures of plus 30 to minus 20, 30 degrees, okay, in a half an hour, okay, and all this change in temperature expands and contracts the fuel, and therefore they have to be ventilated in a way that to accommodate for this expansion and contraction of the liquid. Okay, because of that, we have a vent surge tank here on each side. Right, so if you've filled up the tanks to bursting, literally bursting, on a nice hot day of 40 degrees, okay, then you might, because of the hotness of the fuel and the expansion of the liquid, you might get a bit of overflow into the surge tank, which accommodates overflow fuel, basically. Okay. We also have on the top of the wing a gravity filling cap, which nobody uses nowadays in the civilized world. But if you could not, for any reason, fuel your aircraft in the normal way, and you would have to, in order to get it out of an AOG situation or whatever, you can gravity fill it if you find the right person to be able to climb onto the top of the wing, because the wing of the ATR is quite high. It's a high wing aircraft, which means anhedral or whatever they call it. So the wing is on the top of the airframe, and that means that going onto the top of the wing, you'd probably be 3 or 4 meters. You need a stabilized ladder of 3 or 4 meters with handles to get up there. Then you need to get on the wing, and if you get on the wing of an area that's 3 or 4 meters high, you need to have a proper harness for health and safety, and there's a lot of logistics involved to operate this gravity fill. That's why nobody ever does it anymore. In fact, in most places, it's unauthorized because either the equipment or the training of the personnel isn't there. Okay, so the total quantity of fuel for the ATR 72 is 5,000 kilos. All right. There have been, I know of at least one accident when an aircraft ran out of fuel because of this refueling panel that used to be common to the it used to be common for the ATR 42 and for the 72, and the 42 I think only fits 4,500 kilos. So when the panel was indicating full, it only had 4,500. But if you fitted this panel that's showing full on an ATR 72, it's only got 4,500, but it's indicating full, which should be 5,000. Anyway, kind of long story short, I think it was an Air Algeria aircraft flying from Malta to Algeria or something like that, ran out of fuel and crashed into the sea because they had fitted, it used to be a common panel. Yeah, but now they've put safeties in place that you can't use a common panel for 72s and 42s to avoid this situation. Right, we digress. Apart from being able to accommodate the fuel, we also have to distribute it from the tanks to the engines to ignite it and cause the thrust that we do. All right, so that's we have 2 engine feed systems, one for each side. Okay, a refuel system to be able to onboard the fuel here through this refueling point. We select the fuel, and to defuel as well. And lastly, we also have an indicating system, okay, not this one, but the one in the cockpit that shows the fuel quantities and temperatures. So here we have the fuel system display, as well as the indications on the fuel panel. And we said from day one, or from the ATR1 session, if you remember, that the display on the MFD really ties in, all the pictures here of the valves and everything ties in really well with the indications on the panels, so that we have an overview of what's happening on the aircraft. Okay, remember, green lines on the system display means that there is movement. Okay, here the green lines are on the panel, they're always there just to indicate, just to show us the indication. But on the multifunction display here, there's no green lines, which means the fuel pump has therefore low pressure, and if there's low pressure, switched off, and therefore we get a low pressure indication on the feed line because it's switched off. It's doing its job. Look, the off light is on. The off light is on, the low pressure light is on, because if the pump is not pressurized, it's not pushing the fuel along this green line towards the engine. In this scenario, I've switched the pumps on. Once I switch the pumps on, the associated low pressure lights go out because there's pressure now, and you'll see them feeding the engine. So there'll be a green line towards the engine. That's how it should be. Technical things, I also have jet pumps here to enable all the fuel to be diverted and reversed and cooled and whatever. It's not part of the exercise. This exercise is just to show you the basic indications of pump off, no fuel supply, low pressure indication, pump on, fuel supply, low pressure indication goes out because there is now pressure. So when the engine's running, I have, again, it's a similar indication when the jets, and there is notes to it telling me about the flow of the fuel and everything and how it gets to the engine. Okay, but it's of complete non-interest to us in this session. Okay, we're only looking at the one we just talked about before. Now, in this scenario here, it's good. We have a cross-feed valve here. Just by looking at it, it looks like I can supply from one tank, from the right wing, in this instance, I can supply the left engine, and the same from the left tank, I can supply the right engine if I switch this valve on. I'll go to the previous picture. In normal flight, the cross-feed valve is off. Okay, you can see it, green cross line. It's green cross line because in normal configuration, in normal flight, the left tank supplies the left engine, the right tank supplies the right engine. But if for any reason the left tank cannot supply the right engine, by enabling pushing the cross-feed valve and switching it on and making it green inline, from green cross line, it's gone to green inline, I am then enabling, okay, the offside tank to supply the offside engine. Okay, it's just safeties, inbuilt safeties to enable all of this. Okay, now we start with indications. Now, if I had fuel low level, okay, there you can see the amber low level here. It's triggered at a certain point, let's say 140 kilos, we get the amber indication. Okay, it's showing you've got no fuel in your left-hand tank. And if you don't do anything about it, because the left-hand tank is filling the left-hand wing, this engine is going to go out in a minute. Okay, so in this scenario, what could we do? We could put the crossfeed on. Look at this one. It's got 2,264 kilos in this tank. And I could, by applying the crossfeed valve, I could then supply the left-hand engine with 2,264 kilos to share with the right-hand engine. Okay, so these are indications here where we could actively take action. Okay, this is a bit of an exaggerated thing. This would never happen, that we'd have 140 kilos in one wing and 2.5 in the other wing, because what would happen? The aircraft would roll. Yeah, it would be heavy. And we'd have to trim the aileron and trim it 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 to bring it back. Okay, so this would never happen in normal circumstances. You could have an imbalance, but not such a big imbalance. And we have all the indications. Just put them up for information, guys, of all the possible indications that can be shown. You have a clog indication. So if the fuel filter is clogged, it's full of rubbish and the fuel cannot pass through, then we have a system where it goes into bypass and bypasses the filter. I'd rather get dirty fuel in the engine than no fuel in the engine. So it's showing here that it's bypassing the clogged filter and supplying the engine in the normal fashion, and different other functions here, valve positions, etc. All right. All the other symbols we can get. Okay, we can get fuel temperature. We can get the fuel quantity. We can get the amber light if it's quantity low, as we saw. Okay, and if it gets too low, absolutely nothing in the tank. 30 kilos is nothing, guys, because that's probably considered 30. If it's red, it means it's probably unusable fuel below 50 kilos, because the valve doesn't even have enough suction to suck it and send it to the fuel pump. It doesn't even have enough suction on it. It's running in air, basically. So you wouldn't be able to supply that fuel to the engine to run it. All right, and we have different indications: the fuel on board, the fuel used during the flight, the low level trigger we already saw. If a pump is running and successful, it's got the word run. And you can see always the ergonomics of it is, if it's green, it's good. If it's amber, you pay attention to it. And if it's red, you have to take immediate action. That's what we learned that we got to do from the first lesson. And as the last topic today, we decided we're going to do the hydraulic system, ATA 29, to conclude our third session today. So on the ATR, the aircraft has two hydraulic systems designated, a blue and a green system. A lot of companies, different manufacturers, but especially Airbus, they designate their systems with colors. You have green, blue, yellow systems for hydraulics, whereas Airbus use left, center, right for their systems. It's just how the pilots, how the engineers, how the manufacturers have actually designed the way the system should be designated. It makes no difference. It's not blue hydraulic fluid and green hydraulic fluid. It's just the designation of it. Okay, so we have a blue and green system. Each system is pressurized by an electric pump, which is supplied by the AC wild power. Remember we said each engine has an AC wild pump, okay, that produces AC wild electrics that provide certain things. Okay, so the AC wild is able to provide the motive force, okay, for the electric pump to operate. The blue system also has an auxiliary pump, an extra pump, which is supplied by DC, either manually or automatically. Remember, we said, guys, when we did in session 1, the power supplies. All right, it's important. If an AC Wild works off a running engine, if we lose both engines, we lose all hydraulics. Yeah, which is not a good thing. But the blue system now, working on DC, what does DC operate? Batteries. Okay, so for the last 30 minutes of the flight, my batteries could supply a DC pump, which then could supply some systems that are dependent on the blue hydraulic system. The hydraulic power panel overhead works on the same principle like the engine fuel pump, fuel panel. In other words, each function of it has its on-off switch, and you can see a blue line for the blue system and a green line for the green system. Okay, you can even see a crossfeed here that if one system was down, and we know that once the AC Wild could be down and the DC pump supplies only the blue system, I could supply the green hydraulically operated items by opening the crossfeed and supplying green hydraulics supplied by the blue system. Okay, so the same principle as we had for fuel is now in operation here on the hydraulic panel. Okay, we also have low pressure indication, low level indication for the tank. We have overheat indications, and we have a dedicated push button here. Also, we have the blue pump push button, the green pump push button, and the auxiliary pump push button as well, so that the whole system is then complemented. In terms of the multifunction display indicating all this, these are all the indications we would have. Okay, if the push button is off, you get the word off and it's white. If the push button is off and the DC hot main is less than 18 volts, or the DC bus 2 is off, you'd get standby. Okay, light come on, push button is on and the pump is running, you get a green line. If the push button is on and there's low pressure, less than 1500 psi, because we said the proper indication is the standard supply is 3000 psi. If we got less than 1500 psi, we get a low pressure indication. And there's nothing the pilot can do about it. It's just telling him or her that, look, your hydraulic system has low pressure. There could be slugness in the systems that you're operating. In other words, your aileron spoiler or your spoiler assist, aileron assist might be sluggish because the hydraulic supply is low pressure. All right. If we get an overheat in the system, we get the word overheat in amber. And the principle of these valves, we said, is they can be closed and inline, or green and inline, or green cross line, depending on what the function of them is. Okay, if the crossfeed valve is open, it's showing blue like this. Those are the different indications. What I didn't mention as well, and there's something for dispatchers that need to know, for example, or technicians that are towing the aircraft, a dead aircraft, where there's no engines running, okay, you have the possibility to charge a brake accumulator here with nitrogen. Okay, you can charge a nitrogen accumulator that will necessitate enable braking of the aircraft while you're towing it, okay, so that you can apply the brakes when you get to the other end. Again, more indications. So it's telling me here it's all green. It's got 3000 psi, and I have flaps and spoilers are available. The prop brake, nozzle steering is all available. It has 3000 psi to it. And also, I have the facility to charge the accumulator for the emergency brake. All right, this is for the systems being supplied by the blue system in normal operation. These are the systems being supplied by the green system. There's also 3000 psi here. And my green system operates the landing gear, heavy user. That's why there's very few items here, because it's a heavy user of the landing gear and normal braking. Green is good. If it's not green, if it's less than if it's less than 1500 psi, it will change to amber and I'll get a low pressure. Under 200, we'll probably go from 200 from amber to red. Here is a basic layout of the system. Again, we've got the panel, and if you could possibly cut this panel and move it over to this here, you'd see exactly how it's all plumbed to operate. And we have the blue system on the left-hand side and the green system on the right-hand side, each with its own pump, each with its own supply. We have the ability to cross feed over from one system from blue to green, yet not the other way. Okay, only from blue to green. Yeah, and with an accumulator here that would work. Sorry, this one here that will work in an emergency only to be able to supply braking when both engines are running and the propellers are unfeathered. The blue and green pump are supplied by the AC Wild. Okay, and this is the proper function of it. It's showing me the blue system is coming from the engine number 1 from the AC Wild and supplying its systems. The green power system is being supplied by the right-hand engine AC Wild pump to the system for the green stuff. The cross-feed valve is crossed and inline green, which means green means it's working, but I have selected it in a way that it's not cross-feeding. And my standby pump is in standby. Sorry, my auxiliary pump is in standby. In other words, it's not green and in line because it hasn't been selected yet, because the two systems have their full complement and are doing their job. It's in standby. So the main pump low pressure is less than 1500 psi, or we have an overheat of greater than 121 degrees Celsius. Okay, then after crossfeed, we'd get both systems available. A low level indication, if we have an indication of quantity less than 2.5 liters, okay, then the crossfeed valve would be inhibited, because if you got no hydraulics in here, and we're using this for emergency, then the last thing you want to do is be supplying another system here. So if the quantity of the blue tank is too low, it would inhibit the operation of the crossfeed, because you don't want to be emptying further your blue system by supplying the main landing gear. Okay, main landing gear, I don't care. I can release it by gravity, it will fall out. I don't need hydraulics. Yeah, it's good to have hydraulics, but if I don't have it, I can do an emergency release and release it by gravity. What I don't want to be doing is having an empty low level in the blue tank and then supplying it to a system and losing more fluid out of this already depleted tank. Okay. in the normal situation, okay, we can restore the hydraulics. When the green system is lost and there is a low pressure or overheat on the blue system, so these are just different combinations. Both main hydraulic pumps are lost. Then you have to go to the checklist. The pilots will be given instructions on what to do. And the last scenario, when both main pumps are lost, okay, so we've got off and off, and a white box with the words off and off. The blue pressure is recovered in approach by the auxiliary pump. Okay, this will activate automatically when I've released the landing gear lever down. So I've selected the landing gear lever down, and by doing that, the auxiliary hydraulic power will supply then my essential systems through the blue system.